I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuning in. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. Today, I think we got a pretty good show for you. We're going to break down a couple of things. Dr. Catherine Ramsland has responded to some of the allegations specifically made by Howard Blum in his airmail article. We're going to look into those. We've had a few people come out and talk. Brian Entin being one of the persons who Dr. Catherine Ramsland had reached out to. He released a statement from her. We're going to listen to that and break down, you know, what it is. Is there any truth? Is there not any truth? Was it debunked? Was it confirmed? You know, the whole 9 yards. But before we get into it, I want to thank a couple of folks again. You know, as you guys know, my little girl Rogie, she'll be turning 2 here pretty soon. And we have a link in the description for if anybody wants to get her anything. I know a lot of folks have been following her since before she was born. We had a little turkey timer, so to speak, or countdown or watch before she was born. And I want to say thank you to a few of the folks that have gotten her a couple of things. You know, I'm truly appreciative of you guys. And we have Buffy, Extreme Blonde, Heather, Trevor, Marvin, Sirius Black, Robin, Dr. Shayna, Trevor, Artworks and Family, Catherine, Ohio listener. Also new to the list, we have Bambi, who's also been in the Discord quite a bit. You know, shout out to her. Angel D, what's going on, Angel? Good to see you again. Dr. Vonna has come in and purchased a gift for Rogan. That one, I had a little joke back and forth with her. It was funny. Angie O and Florence White, thank you guys so much. I truly appreciate you guys, and so does Rogie. We plan on doing something as soon as everything comes in and we can, you know, put up a picture and stuff like that. So stay on the lookout for those things. All righty, guys. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's break down first and foremost. We're going to look at Brian Entin's post he put on X referencing Howard Blum's airmail article and Dr. Ramsland and some of the accusations and some of the theorizations, I guess you can say, of Howard Blum that involved Dr. Catherine Ramsland. Let's hear what he had to say.
Hey guys, I hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to get on here and address something. It seems like as we get closer to the Bryan Kohberger trial, there's been more and more speculation and rumors and just bad facts in certain articles that are out there. And I wanted to talk about something in particular. There was an article that was published recently about Dr. Catherine Ramsland. And if you've been following, you know Dr. Ramsland is a professor at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. She was Bryan Kohberger's professor when he was getting his master's degree in criminology when he was in Pennsylvania, before he went to Washington State University where he was getting his PhD. And we've known that. And this article claims, among many things, that Dr. Ramsland has been in touch with Bryan Kohberger, even recently while he's in jail. And a bunch of other things too, that she's been close with the family, and it speculates that the motive could possibly be that Bryan Kohberger was trying to impress Dr. Ramsland. I know Dr. Ramsland, okay, so I'm going to be totally up.
All right, first and foremost, I wanted to stop this here. I don't think there's two sides of or multifacets to what Howard Blum was saying, but when it comes to Bryan Kohberger trying to impress somebody, I don't know if that's the motive or the theory or any of those things. But let's just say it is. I don't think that has any, or should not. Dr. Ramsland shouldn't have, like, that has nothing to do with her. You know, if he was trying to impress her, you know, she wasn't egging it on. You know, those type of things. You know, and this is one of the things that I've spoken about with Dr. Bona the last time that when we had her on, was that I made the statement. I said, in a way, Dr. Ramsland could be a victim of Bryan Kohberger's manipulation. Like, for instance, you know, Dr. Catherine Ramsland puts out her books and her information not to attract, you know, people trying to learn from her so they can go out and commit a perfect crime or any of those things. It's to understand the criminal mind, understand why people do certain things that they do, and then at the same time, maybe perhaps point out some red flags so that way you can see these things. But, you know, and Dr. Vona had brought up an excellent point. She had mentioned the fact that in her class, she talks about, in a specific class that she teaches, she talks about eating disorders, and she talks about certain ways that certain people can accomplish certain things, whether it's bulimia or whatever the case may have been. And she doesn't want to, you know, at the same time, she wants to inform her students, but she has to keep it in the back of her mind that know that maybe perhaps one of her students could be suffering from an eating disorder, and at the same time is now getting ideas of how to, you know, further, you know, use other ways or means of becoming more involved in those disorders. And so, you know, it's a double-edged sword. And that's kind of one of the things that I had mentioned last time. And so I don't think that if Bryan Kohberger, let's just say this theory is accurate, that it was because he maybe not wanted to impress her, but maybe wanted to grab her attention or something to that effect. I don't think it's it should be anything on her. I hope that makes sense, because she didn't go out there and put out a training on how to get away with murder, so to speak. It's just, unfortunately, somebody can go into our classroom and find out ideas and find out things that investigators do, which could then teach these people essentially, you know, how to better prepare themselves to get away with murder. And it's like I mentioned, it's a double-edged sword. And I don't think that she should be looked at in any light of being a suspect in this case, because, you know, she's not alleged to have committed any crime. You know, Bryan Kohberger has. So first and foremost, I want to say that.
Front about that. I've gotten to know her over the last several years. I've interviewed her for stories. I've always found her to be a very, very credible, nice, honest person. And she has told me that she doesn't want to talk on the record about Bryan Kohberger. So she's told me all along, until after the trial, because she might be a witness. She doesn't want to interfere with the trial.
So she might be a witness. That's one of the main reasons she doesn't want to talk about Bryan Kohberger. Now, how could she be a witness? Could she be a witness in, a character witness? That's a possibility. Could she be a witness for the state? I don't know. I mean, does it sound like there was something that may have occurred during that time? That there would be, I think it's like and if Chloe, if you're in here, let me know, like a 402 or a 403 where you're having other crimes being brought up. Wouldn't, if she's going to be a witness for the state, I think those would have been in place, those type of documentations and motions. I think it's a 402 or a 403B, one of those two things. And so I don't know that that would be the case. Now, if Bryan Kohberger indeed was emailing her during the time before and after the murders, could that be used? Now, I do know that she says that there was no correspondence and that Bryan Kohberger hadn't been in contact with her since his arrest. So no correspondence. I went to AI just to clarify this, and I asked AI, is a unresponded, unintended, and unprovoked email considered a correspondence? And the result that I got was no. So, for instance, if Bryan Kohberger unprovokedly emailed Dr. Catherine Ramsland and she never responded, that's not considered a correspondence. Now, she would have had to have responded. Now, if in the during the communication of an emails, if there are going back and forth and an email does go unresponded, that can still be considered a correspondence because it's part of a larger conversation. And so she mentioned also that Bryan Kohberger had not been in touch with her since his arrest. And so, that kind of tells me that before the arrest, he was. Now, how much earlier, I don't know. He wasn't at WSU very long. That was his first semester. He was getting into a lot of trouble. His disturbing behavior was getting him terminated from his position as a teaching assistant. And so I don't know. But, just wanted to stop and point those things out. 404, there's Chloe. Thank you so much. 404 is character evidence. 403 is unfair prejudice. I have no clue what the heck she would be a witness for unless he emailed her or something. Thank you so much, Chloe, for bringing up your expertise in this. Thank you so much. Coming in clutch. But yeah, that's exactly the point that I would be interested in getting across. And now Chloe, who has some experience or a lot more than me, that's for sure, in legal proceedings and things of that nature, I 100% side with what she's saying. There is, she don't know what she could be a witness for. But then again, if they use that Reddit post right now, I don't know if that was for her classroom. It sounded like that was for Dr. I can't remember her name. I think it's like Bolger or something of that nature. The professor who ended up recommending him to the PhD program. She is the one. Also, the entire class was online. She's the one who recommended him to the PhD program, and I believe she's the one also who stated that Reddit post was part of his thesis for her class. So I don't think that she'd be a witness for that either. So let's see. Also, if he did reach out to her, and that's why she is a witness, if she is, wouldn't require any special filings because the defendant's statements are exception to hearsay. There you go. And we don't know if she's a witness or not, so I want to also reference that and put that out there. All right, let's continue this.
She obviously knew Bryan Kohberger. She was his professor. So she's she is saying what is it, but she is now talking on the record about some of this to me because she is saying that what is in this article is not true. And I'm going to read you what Dr. Ramsland texted me. I had no email correspondence with Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU, Washington State Universities.
All right, so all he's going to do the rest of the way is just kind of read this. I can do the same. So I guess it says, I had no email correspondence with Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU, meaning there was no emails going back and forth. He has not been in touch with me since his arrest. That kind of tells me that he was in touch with her prior to his arrest. Now, how prior? That's a big question, as I mentioned before, because if it was immediately prior, if it was in the days leading up or to his arrest or a short time before his arrest, that was, well, he was still, you know, he was still attending WSU. Now, unless what she's referring to is that he didn't email her until he got back into Pennsylvania and he wasn't at WSU and he was back in Pennsylvania on December 16th, I believe, 2022. But I think that's going into it too deep. You know, I don't think she's going into this train of thought like, oh, okay, he wasn't technically at WSU. He was technically in Pennsylvania. She's just responding to what these allegations are. So I don't think it's that in depth. And so it's either they did have some sort of correspondence back and forth prior to the start of school at WSU, or she didn't respond to any unprovoked emails that he may have been sending her. So she goes on to say, or goes on to text, I called his parents as a gesture of kindness, but I do not advise them about the case. I called his parents, past tense, of a gesture of kindness, but I do not advise them, present tense, of the case. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. I mean, that kind of sounds, it sounds like she called them then and still just talk to them a little bit now still, you know, because wouldn't it be, but I didn't advise them about the case? You know what I'm saying? You know, do you guys agree with me? Like, it could be just, I mean, I'm like I said before, she was probably messaging this pretty quickly, addressing some of the things. She's probably upset. I mean, I feel like I'm in the middle of a heated author battle here. You know, you've heard of rap battles and there's a mixtape being dropped here and there. This is some good stuff between some authors and some writers. So let's see. But what do you guys think? I called his parents as a gesture of kindness, past tense, but I do not advise them about the case, present tense. Does that say that she still talks to them? I mean, well, there's nothing, I don't know if there's anything wrong with that. You know, if she does talk to them or not, you know, I would probably assume that she had met them before any of this went down while Bryan Kohberger was a student at DeSales. I mean, he did get recommended to the PhD program. The professor who recommended him stated that she had only recommended two other students and called them very bright. And so I don't think that he was a complete evil, like, monster 24/7, or at least portraying that onto people 24/7. You know, I think he obviously had some moments there. You wouldn't get recommended. Again, this was all while he was still living with his mom and dad, which I do think had a huge role into, you know, perhaps why something like this didn't happen sooner. There's also the facet of adding the fact that he was now put in a position of authority, you know, being a teacher's assistant. And so you have a lot of different elements that are going on right now in Bryan Kohberger's life at that time that I think was just kind of building up to that escalation point where, you know, he got that, you know, position of authority. I think it got to his head a little bit. And obviously he was having some problems and he had some issues, you know. Let's see. I did not call them hours after the arrest, as Blum claims. I don't think she's lying either in any of the things that she's saying at all. So I would think that this is probably true too. You know, I mean, I think at the end of the day, even if she wanted to reach out to them for whatever reason, you have to have the respect from the family. They just went through something pretty traumatic on their own end. Police just broke into their house, zip tied them, had them on the floor probably, and hauled off their son for an unspeakable crime. And so I don't know if you're calling them up right away. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think that's the case there, that she did that. I agree that she probably didn't. She says, I have never talked to his sister about any book. That's good to know. I never mentioned Kierkegaard in my classes. I did not broker anything regarding a lawyer. I have not been invited by the Kohbergers to Idaho. I don't know where they'll be staying. I don't know who Blum's source is or why he reports information for which he has no proof. Stephanie comes in saying she is a professor that knows how to speak and write grammatically correct. So I think there's something to that. That's an interesting point. Very interesting point. What's the problem? Why is everybody? I don't think anybody's making a big deal. I think, I think a lot of people are making somewhat of a deal of the things that Howard Blum were saying as far as going to Idaho with the family and being in the bed and breakfast and, potentially, involving herself with their lawyers. Those are some pretty high accusations there. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not necessarily certain you should put that out there unless you know for sure that that's true, because that's not good. And yes, that shouldn't be anything there. And in the end, like I've said before, she's not putting out a class to teach people how to commit crimes. It's unfortunate there are people out there that seek out those that are trying to help and exploit them. And what Bryan Kohberger was doing was trying to exploit information on how to get through and how not to get caught. Whether it is through, by the physical evidence aspect and also the profile aspect that he couldn't obviously keep away from. He ended up doing a lot of things. He, in my opinion, well, let's see, we can break down a little bit of what he did. He drove back out there the morning after. That's kind of, typical of somebody that committed a crime. They want to see what they've done. He researched the crime as well. And so, there's a possibility that he may have inserted himself in the crime as far as a, social media and things of that nature. And I don't know if that last one, the social media part, is 100% true or not. I know that's more theory and speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was watching, the YouTubes and the news media and stuff like that. I think that was one of the reports that did come out, while he was at, in Latell County, was that he watched a lot of news media about himself. And so, take that for what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the chat rooms and those type of things. But yes, I don't think anybody should be looking at her or saying that she has some sort of responsibility. She's not the one. She had nothing to do with what happened on November 13, 2022. All right, so let me pull this down real quick. Let's look at Howard Blum's response, because Howard Blum did respond. He said, Catherine Ramsland had issued a statement about my recent piece. She confirms she reached out to BK's parents after arrest. She refutes that BK emailed her while at WSU. I apologize for that error. Continued. So even here, Howard Blum says that, he apologized for the error if, that Bryan Kohberger emailed her while at WSU. Number 3, Catherine Ramsland states she did not demand BK's parents get approval before meeting PA lawyer. I never wrote that. Nevertheless, they did. I don't know. Number 4, there's a chapter in her student BK, on her student BK in her forthcoming book. Can't wait to read. Sure, it will be perspective. And we heard that, right? We had a podcast that we were watching here not too long ago, and it was Dr. Catherine Ramsland, and she had she's talking about her serial killer apprentice, and she mentioned that in her memoir that she's going to write a chapter on Bryan Kohberger. So take that for what it is. That's true. But like I said before, I'm not sure. There's a lot of people that have written books on this case, and Dr. Ramsland has written a lot of books that have helped out law enforcement, apprehend and profile serial killers and other people, and things of that nature because of her work with serial offenders. Number 4, Catherine Ramsland states she never taught Kierkegaard in her class to be K. I never said she did. I think she missed the point in my reference. Number 5, I still stand by my hypothesis, and that it's just a theory. Okay, well, let's pull it up. Let's pull up the article real quick. Just kind of go over some of the things and in compare and contrast. Kohberger's relationship and tutelage with Ramsland did not end when he traveled across the country when he enrolled in the PhD criminal justice program at WSU. Kohberger allegedly emailing his old professor the days before the murders and in the days immediately after. What was discussed remains for now at least another mystery. Let's see. Hours after Kohberger's arrest, Ramsland allegedly telephoned his mother to offer her wisdom, guidance to help her former student and family through the looming ordeal. So this is one of the things that she says did not happen. And I believe her. I don't think it happened in this manner. I don't think she reached out to him in the hours after his arrest. Who knows how soon it was. She didn't state that. She did state that she did reach out to the parents, but it was out of kindness. Let's see. It says, over the 2 years that followed, the professor allegedly stayed in touch with the family as well as the Kohberger himself. And let's pull that back up real quick. It says here, I did not call them. It says right here, she says, Kohberger has not been in touch with her. He has not been in touch with me since his arrest. So she's denying that Bryan Kohberger has been in touch with her since, in the 2 years that has followed since his arrest. She even reportedly conferred with Kohberger's sister. She's writing a book, and she denies this as well, which I say that that's probably true. Here's some of the things Blum goes on to say right here that says, still speculative account of allegedly what led to Bryan Kohberger armed with a 7-inch bladed knife and into the house on King Road. So right here, he talks about it as this theory being a speculative account. In the next paragraph, he goes, who, according to this theory, and he's referencing that Professor Ramsland, he was idolizing her. Again, he states the term theory. So he does cover his tail and puts theory out there. So, just wanted to put that out there. But I'll read the yellow. It says here, Kohberger wanted to prove that the pupil was ready to become the teacher, determined to demonstrate to the professor, who, according to this theory, was the idolized object of his respect and affection, that he learned all her lessons well. The hypothesis continued. And here he even says here, like John Hinckley, who tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan to win the heart of Jodie Foster, a woman he never met. I think this is a great point by what Blum is saying as well, is that, and this is kind of the point that I was making as well. Ramsland had nothing to do with what happened. She didn't groom him. She didn't train him, didn't do any of those things. It's a good likely chance that Bryan Kohberger sought her out, studied her, and, it's scary. It must be scary for her to, come to the realization that she may have been in the presence of somebody that wanted to take the life of somebody. Now, if we were to think about this logically, Bryan Kohberger purchased the K-bar knife, the knife sheath, and the sharpener in Pennsylvania before he moved to Washington. the mask as well, and I think the backpack as well. So a lot of his kill kit and what he used was purchased before he even moved, before he would have ever ran into Maddie, Xana, Ethan, or Kaylee. You know, before he would have had any problems at WSU that was leading to his termination. In fact, he was and should have been on the biggest high. He just graduated with his master's degree. He was just recommended to the PhD program. Everything that he wanted was pretty much in reach almost. And yet he's purchasing these things. And so, you know, I know a lot of people will, you know, say, well, what made him commit this crime? I don't know what made him commit this crime, but whatever, you know, started this interest, whatever, you know, got the ball rolling or started that first domino didn't happen at Pullman or in Moscow. It happened in Pennsylvania. Now, I don't know. I mean, he may have had these thoughts and issues and apparitions of being this guy that was going to commit an unspeakable crime and get away with it for some time now. I mean, he may have had that in his mind since he was a young man. Who knows, you know, how long it was in his head. And so, you know, you can't look at what he did and think that the people that were around him or associated with him were one and the same, because there's a good chance that nobody knew that he was either capable or was up to anything that he is alleged to have committed. And I think that probably goes for, you know, his professors. I mean, I think even though his behavior being as disturbing as it was, I don't know, and it don't sound like they got Bryan Kohberger's name from any of his students or teachers. You know, there was no tips about him that way. And so as disturbing as it was, they didn't know that he was capable of doing something like this. And he drove a white Elantra, which was in the news. Now, I don't know how could they have known what he drives? But, you know, you would expect people driving to the same place on a daily basis probably would run into each other in the parking lot at some point, and you would see that he drove something similar. So just kind of food for thought for that. And then he goes on to say, nevertheless, she might find something in the theory. So he does Blum says that this is a theory multiple times in his, you know, as he reiterates in his X post. And then this is what it says here. Nevertheless, she might find something in the theory. After all, in another episode in her remarkably accomplished life, she wrote a doctoral dissertation on Kierkegaard. It was that Danish philosopher who conceded that my writing should be considered my monument to Rain Olsen, a woman with whom he had a brief youthful relationship. Is it too far of a stretch to consider that a killer's logic had made a similar heartfelt journey? So he didn't say that she taught Kierkegaard in her class. I think he's talking about obviously something that she had, a piece that she had written on him. And so, you know, I think that there's a little bit of probably emotions going on. You know, both people are a little bit upset about what's going on and maybe saying something and not understanding the full context. So let's see. Put a couple of stars, guys, if you guys have any questions. Again, like I said, I think that Bryan Kohberger sought her out. And I don't think Dr. Ramsland had anything to do with this case. Midwest gifted 1 Drunk Turkey Show membership. Thank you so much, Midwest. Appreciate that. You know, because at the end of the day, like I said, I think that hold on, I went a little bit too far back. At the end of the day, I just think that Bryan Kohberger purchasing everything in Pennsylvania is a huge, huge point that can't be overlooked. It cannot be overlooked, you know, unless, like I mentioned, unless he visited Moscow or Pullman beforehand and something happened then. and he just held on to this vendetta or whatever the case may be. I just don't think that's it. The fact that, and I saw in the comment section, like somebody say, well, if his issue was with WSU and his issue was with like some of the ways he was getting treated, why not target somebody at WSU? And the thing is, he still wanted to get away with this crime. And I think he wanted to, it's multifaceted. I don't think we're going to find a simple answer here. There's no way you can. And so, yes, he had some issues and some problems that were probably building up and building some rage in him. However, he also knew that he probably couldn't attack somebody that he was connected to, because then it would lead back to him. It's fairly easy to, to connect those dots. And I don't think the planning portion is what is going to end up doing him in. I think it's the impulse portion, right? And that being, for instance, somebody seeing him and he turns on his phone probably a lot earlier than he wanted to in that trip away. The fact that because somebody saw him, and what I mean is by Dylan seeing him, and he not seeing anything on the news, his impulsiveness and stuff, he's probably doing those Google searches that Steve is talking about, right? During the commission of the crime, he leaves the knife sheath behind. That wasn't something part of the plan. That was during the commission of the crime. So if it was part of the planning aspect, I feel that it's probably not going to be a, what's the word I'm looking for? Overlooked, right? I think the planning part is the least like where he's going to make a mistake. It's the impulse part where he makes the mistake. And I think that's what ends up catching him, and that's what's going to end up catching him as well in the end. Let's see. None before the arrest and none after. Imagine if BK sent that thumbs up selfie to Ramsland. That'd be wild. Yeah, I mean, that would be. I think that was more to immortalize the his feelings that he was probably going through in that moment. He wanted to capture that, if I had to take a guess. But I don't know if he's sending that to anybody. I think that was for himself, but that would be wild if he did. But I doubt it. Let's see. And that's where I was at. So I remember now. I kind of lost where I was at earlier. So I don't think he would attack anybody at WSU because that wouldn't have been part of his plan. His plan would have been to have gone after somebody that's not connected to him, right? That's why he chose somebody from a town away that attends a different school or somebody's. I strongly suspect there was either one or two targets, and that I think that Xana and Entin for sure. I think Xana walking up the stairs is what probably turned Bryan Kohberger onto her direction, and ultimately what ended up happening. I think Dylan didn't. He saw her, right? Well, at least maybe perhaps. I would assume he would have saw her. That's why he's turning on his phone. That's why he's doing the Google searches. He saw somebody, or maybe somebody yelled. I think that was also a rumor that somebody yelled out to be quiet or something to that nature, right? That's not in anything. So I don't know if it's true or not, but if somebody did yell out something and he heard that, and he was aware that somebody was aware that he was in the house, that he didn't know where they were at, that could have also been a reason why he would have done the Google searches. But I think he chose Moscow, and he chose people he didn't know, so that way that was part of something that he could control, right? And so that way he wouldn't get caught. So not a regular correspondent, or I don't know. Yeah, she just said that they didn't correspond with each other, which is there wasn't an email correspondence, which tells me when I Googled it, there has to be a conversation going back and forth. So if it's an unprovoked, meaning that Bryan Kohberger randomly emailed her out of the blue and it wasn't responded to, then that wouldn't be considered a correspondence. And then she mentions the fact that he hadn't contacted her since before his arrest. So I don't know. Take that for what it is. What's going on, Dr. Vona? It's interesting that she called his parents too. I can't imagine any of my grad school professors calling my parents, even if something happened to me. Well, I mean, it's. I think because, well, no, I mean, I think it's because of her experience in the field. Maybe perhaps is another reason, because of what the nature of the crime was, etc. But I don't know. I mean, she's mentioned multiple times that she doesn't really talk to victims, because that's not her thing. She's not writing a true crime book, I believe is the way she puts it. She's writing on serial killers, what makes them tick, what makes them do the things that they do. Is it the nature versus nurture aspect of it? And so, yeah, I mean, and when you look at it from that sense, it is kind of, I guess, odd. But then again, I mean, she may have met them because Bryan Kohberger was successful at the sales. There's a good chance that, Bryan Kohberger's family was proud of him. His parents were proud of him. They may have met the professor and had some sort of cordial relationship with her because of his success at the sales. And so I don't know. I mean, there's a few things that could be there. You know what I'm saying? Their disses come with a lot of tact, though. This is the diss hits or mix. Yes, please hit the like button, subscribe. You know what to do, guys. Where was the call to the victim's parents as a gesture of kindness? Just because she was a professor at some time, it doesn't mean she needs to be in touch with him and family, unless for herself. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think there could be a world where Bryan Kohberger's dad and mom was so proud of him that they became friendly with the professors. I think even Howard Blum had written that his dad was calling him Dr. Kohberger already and stuff. And so, I think that's a possibility. Blum might have some flaky sources. I do know of unapprehended SK who used to have regular discussions with Blum. Blum had no idea. FBI knows who I'm talking about, but Blum does not. That would be weird, right? Imagine if somebody that right, is an SK, is a serial killer. And you find out later. And if you're in a position that, like, for instance, Blum or Catherine Ramsland or even like myself, where I don't do it as often as I did, but I used to take phone calls from folks that were in, that followed true crime. It happened to Howard Stern. Is it possible that somebody listening could call in that have committed a violent crime? And wanting to get off on what it is that they did by talking about it on a show somewhere. You know what I mean? And it's not like I or anybody else who does YouTube can like trace these things. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure we can give our information to detectives and things of that nature, but it's probably a prank 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100. It's like that one time out of the blue, you have no idea, you know what I'm saying? So, and that wouldn't mean that neither I or a radio host or Dr. Phil or whoever, right? Who are put in a position where somebody could try to reach out to either pick their brain or something of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Hope that makes sense. Hope it makes sense. Can I leave the comments on the screen a little longer? Sure. Take it off real quick. Let me see. Let's see. If you guys got any questions, put a couple of stars there. You know, speaking of, you know, taking phone calls, would you guys want to do that again? I'm thinking about doing that again. Taking some phone calls. I wonder if I just put it out to do it in a certain way, because I want to make sure we don't get spammed and a bunch of people calling in with a bunch of nonsense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't mind having a discussion with somebody who has an opposite opinion, but I also don't want to get a phone call and somebody go, F this and that's that, and you this and you that. You know what I'm saying? There's no way of scanning that type of stuff. But let me know if you guys think. Maybe I'll do it again. I haven't done it in a while. Let's see. I was shocked when the book came out, not soon after his arrest. You know, there's a few books out there already. You know, I mean, Howard Blum's not the only author that's writing on the Idaho case. If Dr. Ramsland writes about this case, she's not going to be the first one either. Probably not the last one. You know, and I don't know if Bryan Kohberger's sister's writing a book or not. I think that there's a world that exists that she could be in and not involve Dr. Ramsland. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't know. I have no idea. Just wanted to talk about that aspect of it as well. The more I phrase the words, read between the lines, or Ramsland's text, it does seem like she had or has some sort of friendship with the Kohberger family. I don't know. I would say that there's something there. It doesn't seem weird, right? And I mean, it's just the way she used her words here. Where is it? I called his parents a gesture of kindness, but I did not advise them about the case. Called in past tense, meaning, you know, the first time that she spoke to him was out of kindness. I do not advise them about the case is present tense, you know, meaning that she still talks to him, just not about the case. And I mean, I don't know if there's anything wrong with that or not, to be honest with you. I mean, if Bryan Kohberger's family, I don't think they did anything wrong, right? And so they are like kind of like some of these other serial killers that go out there and commit crimes, whose family have no idea that their loved one was capable or had committed any of these crimes. And it's a shock, and it's everything else that goes into it for them as well. And so I don't know. I mean, if you had a family who's grieving, I mean, I know it's a different type of grief, but they're grieving because of what their son did, and they're reaching out, and you know, I don't know. I mean, would you be cold-hearted not to talk back? I have no idea. You know, I've never been in that situation, so I can't really talk on it. I don't even know if that's the case either, to be honest with you. It just kind of seems that way, you know, with the text messages with the past tense, reached out in kindness, do not advise them. So, you know, it just kind of seems that way, but it doesn't mean that's what it is either. So I really don't know. Why would a college professor reach out to a random student family unless he wasn't just a random student? It's an interesting point. It's a great point, actually. I don't know. So why am I perpetrating Blum speculation by doing this show? No, because I didn't speak about what happened with. So when I talked with Dr. Vona about this, that was before Dr. Ramsland addressed the fact that there was any email correspondence while Bryan Kohberger was at WSC. In fact, there was a lot of this that wasn't aware of that. And in fact, I think I'm putting more to Dr. Catherine Ramsland's side, and I'm wanting to correct the narrative to a certain extent, right? Because, in the last one I had said that Bryan Kohberger, she didn't address Bryan Kohberger's emails. Could that have been something? And she did in this one. And I think she was more detailed about it. But no, I think you're looking at it from the wrong lens. This is not like what I'm saying here isn't to say that there's something to do with this when it comes to Dr. Ramsland. What I'm saying is that I think that there might be some truth, but for the most part, I'm highlighting what Dr. Ramsland also denied happening. And I'm agreeing with her. I've not once said that she was wrong or she's lying. I don't think she is. I think she's been very on point with everything she said. My opinion, believe that it was coincidental that she reached out to his fam. I believe everything about the situation has a quid pro quo element to it. I mean, come on, people, look at her genre and serials. It's possible, but I mean, I don't know. Why shouldn't Blum try to get away with a wild theory? He's gone away with stories for 2 years. It's funny. Yes, please put a couple of stars. That way I can know that you're talking to me and not somebody else. Bryan is a dirty vato. That's funny. Let's see. Dr. Vaughn, what do you think? What do you think about the past tense and present tense aspect? What do you think? Let's see. Somebody say something about a smoking gun. Marty. I want to see the text. I want to see what Marty said. Or Marty. What do you all think the smoking gun is that the prosecution has against BK? Do you think it's something we're aware of? Do you think they have something else up their sleeves that we'll see at the trial? Good question, Marty. So, smoking gun, I think you have, well, the DNA on the knife sheath and the knife sheath underneath the body of a victim is a pretty big smoking gun, to be honest with you, because the skin cells that were left behind were a large amount of skin cells. Now, I will say, given the fact that the topic of today was, in fact, Howard Blum's article, Howard Blum had other things that he has written in his articles. One of the things that he wrote was that there was a speck of blood and that it was a small amount and that the state lab didn't find anything, and that they had to send it out to Othram, and Othram had to do some sort of series of tests that they normally do with like degraded or small DNA to increase the amount so that they can find the suspect through a genealogy. And that ended up not being the case whatsoever. What ended up happening was there was what the Idaho State Lab found the DNA. What they weren't able to find is a matching CODIS. And so that's why they sent out the DNA to the Othram lab so they can do the family tree, so they can kind of figure out who the DNA belonged to. And so that was actually one of the biggest points that swayed me into going from Bryan Kohberger most likely did it about 75%, 70% sure he did it, or was guilty to about 99%. Because at this point, there was little to argue and everything else fell in place. The video of the vehicle outside matching his down to the one, front license plate. I was always suspicious of the phone being off during the specific time of the murders. My thing was at that time, there was some question marks, obviously. How was his phone not connected to the towers? Could it have been, by, out of service and a bunch of other things? I thought there was some plausible explanations. And then, as this case has gone and as evidence has come out and warrants and things of that nature, well, we come to find out that they now know because they have his phone. They didn't have it at the time of the PCA writing, but after his arrest, they have his phone. Now they know for a fact that he manually turned it off during that time, which is also a smoking gun, in my opinion. And so what you have is DNA at the crime scene. You have a video of his vehicle outside without a front license plate. You have his phone off during that specific time. I think I mentioned the DNA with the knife sheath there. You also have, according to Steve, a Google search that would give you prior knowledge information. I mentioned it earlier in this podcast that his impulsiveness is probably a lot of what caught him or got him caught. And I think he did see Dylan as he was walking out. And I think he expected Dylan to have called 911. And I think the curiosity, that saying curiosity kills a cat. I think that curiosity got to him. He wanted to know if, what was going on. So I think that's the reason why he turned on his phone at 4:28 a.m. and, or was it 4:48 a.m.? I apologize. And then I think he may have done some searches before he was, as Steve said, confident enough to go all the way back out there at 9:00. And so I think there was a Google search. And if you're searching murders in Moscow or quadruple homicide in Moscow before the bodies are found or before 911 is made, that's a pretty big red flag. And remember, there was no connection between him and the victim. So it's not like he can say, oh, well, I was part of this thread of Snapchats that we saw it. He wasn't connected to them. He had no knowledge of who they were, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can't have your cake and eat it too at the same time. So I think that's going to end up doing him in as well. But I think the Google search, is key, because once you add that in with the DNA on the knife sheath, on a knife sheath that he had purchased, with the K-bar knife that he had purchased that can't be found, with the vehicle outside and his phone being off and turned off manually, specifically during that specific time of the crimes, it seems like a smoking gun trail or something of that nature. It's I don't know if it's a smoking gun, but there's a lot of smoke there to this fire, and I think that it's not that difficult for anybody to connect these dots unless you're purposefully trying not to be honest. Good question, though, Martin. Good question. I'm glad I could answer it. You and others are just wrong. Admit it. I'm wrong about what? See, here's the other thing, too. Some of the Probergers have got it in their mind that I wrote this article. that this was my theory or narrative. If you go back to the the show that we talked about, it the very first one when we brought this up, I think the first thing I said is, all right, this is Howard Blum's theory, not mine. But yet some of these people just can't get it through their heads. They don't understand. They don't know. I could tell people air. I could say air is good for you. Breathe that on oxygen. And some of these Probergers, just because I said that, would be like, man, we gotta hold our breath now. It's funny. It's funny. By focusing on possible Kohberger guilt, we give a pass to the dangerous gangs. Oh my God. You should have that transparency girl on your show and school it in the data and her theories. And we'll see. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I will be honest with you. As these crime is, thank you. I appreciate that. The reason that the drug thing doesn't make any sense, right? One, there was a download of all of their phones. This includes Dylan's, this includes Bethany's, everybody's phone was downloaded. Now, why didn't they arrest them if they saw that there was some sort of criminal activity on there? Now, I know a lot of people will say, hey, it's because they were female. They didn't want to arrest them. They were girls. Well, they didn't have a problem arresting, what was that other lady? The one that everybody thinks was out there? Oh, gosh, what's her name? It was D and something. I can't remember her name. She had a headband thing on. Well, anyways, they had no problem arresting her for the murder of Caden Young. You know what I'm saying? Because she was somewhat involved in giving drugs. Now, they end up getting released and they end up going on. But, I mean, come on now. Somebody gets arrested. They end up going without any charges. It's because they talked, right? Now, obviously, the charges that they put on them by trying to charge them for the murder of Caden Young was a tactic. You overcharge them in the beginning to get them to talk, those type of things. And it worked, in my opinion, which is why we haven't heard from them or anything. They've disappeared. I would have too. You know, I would have been hiding from whoever it is that I narked on 100%. And so they had no problems arresting a female for the murder of somebody else or any of those things. So that's one thing. Two, there's nothing in the phones that indicates that this was some sort of drug thing. They had the downloads of their phones. Now, I know some people might say, hey, well, maybe they had a burner phone or something. I'm like, I get that. But I mean, you know, they looked into their phones from almost, a year back and stuff like that. And it's not like a lot of these girls were living there for a very long time. In fact, I think Dylan and Bethany had only lived there a short period of time. And so, you know, I think they'd only been there a short period of time. So unless they met somebody out of the blue and, you know, the first time that they meet, they're like, hey, let's use burner phones, you know, in all of our communications from now on forward so that nobody can trace us back to a homicide we may commit in the future sometime. It just makes no sense. Now, the house itself, let's think about it logically as far as it potentially being a drug house. One, drug houses that are held, because I've heard these theories and rumors. Oh my God, it was a large amount of drugs. That's why they did it. And somebody flushed it down the toilet or whatever the case may be. You know, there was a party the night before and there was so many people in there. Those aren't that's not what happens at drug houses like that. You know, drug houses, usually have people in it. They have guns. They're watching it. In fact, there's also people outside of that house that are in other houses that are watching that house too, especially if it's a large quantity of drugs. It's not like they're going to be like, all right, we're going to have all these drugs here, and then we're going to allow you to have these parties with a tremendous amount of people coming in and out, a lot of traffic with it. It can be stolen or any of those things. Just makes no sense. You know, a lot of people say, oh, it was done because of money. What financially gained? Who financially gained from this crime? You know, what drugs are being ran out of that house now because of what happened? Absolutely none. You know, and it's not like there wasn't a lot of turnover there. You know, that house had a tremendous amount of turnover. And so all you had to really do is just wait 3-4 months and somebody else was going to be moving in and somebody was moving out. And so this whole theory of it being drugs or this, it's just kind of doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Not to mention also, all of them, their toxicology report came back clean with no drugs. All of them. Not one of them came back with a dirty drug test. It's just wild, you know what I mean? That conspiracy can be thrown out there. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't any drugs in Idaho or that there aren't any problems out there with gangs. But I'm saying is in this scenario, there is 0 dots to connect to that in this case. Like you can't connect anything there. I don't know what dot you're connecting that would lead you to believe that. No drugs found. I mean, is the next thing I'm going to hear there are tunnels, and there was no drugs found, not in the property, not in the system of any of the victims. You know, even the defense is not even accusing Dylan of being under the influence of narcotics. It's not even been brought up once by the defense as a possible theory. Not once. Not once, yet somehow we're supposed to buy this thought. Why? When the defense themselves aren't even bringing this up. I appreciate the compliment. I just don't think that there's anything there for it to be with drugs. It just makes zero sense. The creators have apologized for their misspelling. The lady's reputation is being demolished by the creators misspeaking. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not know that, Dr. Vona. Let's see. I wonder if Ramsland will be called as a witness. I actually hope she is called. I do too. You know, I don't know if she can testify to anything that was happening in DeSales or anything like that. If she doesn't, I'm sure going to read that book on her memoir when she, you know, just for that chapter on Bryan Kohberger. I'm sure a lot of people are. You know, and I don't think she can write a book with him until everything is done, right? I mean, he would have had to, because so he's going to go through this process, and then he has an appeal process. I don't think he's going to be writing a book or speaking about the crime or his mindset or any of those things with Dr. Ramsland during that appeal process. So if she's wanting a book, he's going to have to plead guilty and or accept the verdict, right? So I don't know, because she made some interesting comments in the last one, right? That last podcast where she's like, how did I not see Bryan Kohberger in front of me? She's like, you can't tell these predators, right? That doesn't really shine a lot of confidence that she thinks Bryan Kohberger is innocent. More so the opposite, thinking that he's guilty. And right now, he's not going to be going out there writing a book while he's claiming innocence. If he's found guilty, if he's going to be fighting, if he's going to be appealing and going through that appeal process, he's probably not going to write a book during that process, admitting guilt or anything like that either. And just, you know, given how long it takes for that appeal process in Idaho, you know, could be a couple of decades. And given Dr. Ramsland, you know, her age, I'm not sure she's going to be writing many books by then. You know, she may have been well retired in the next 20 years. I mean, I could be retired in the next 20 years, you know what I'm saying? And so, you know, so I don't know, maybe unless she thinks that he's going to plead out or he's going to accept his fate, I don't know how much of a, book in the manner that she's written before, if that's feasible. Does that make sense? Yep, I agree. Fancy Nancy goes, his impulse control and ego is what tripped him up. I agree 100%. And, you know, somebody who's impulsive and somebody who's, you know, has an ego that way, I wouldn't be surprised if he did reach out to Dr. Catherine Ramsland, maybe even to spark her interest in the case. Try to get her to talk about it. Who knows? Maybe he could have been trying to be like, you know, hey, there's this case, whatever, and trying to get ideas so that he don't get caught up or tripped up. You know what I'm saying? Trying to pick her brain so that he don't make a mistake. I mean, I have no idea what they could have been if they were there at all. if they were there at all. What concerns me is what else Mr. Blum has written that is incorrect. If you're not contributing to the situation, you're a part of the problem. Thank you very much, Patrick. Yeah, I see your point there, man. You know, I do know that there are some things that he's gone out there that are wrong. I mean, I don't expect him to get everything right. You know, you would expect the things he puts down in writing, maybe more. You know, like Steve had said, he didn't expect me to get everything right. And I don't think we have. You know, one of the things that we had said, and I have an interview there with Christy where we were talking about the discovery of Ethan and Xana. And in my interview, she tells me that she had that Steve and Hunter had spoken at the celebration of life. And during that conversation that Ethan had mentioned that, you know, the door was blocked, you know, and that he had a hard time getting up there. I guess that's what he meant by getting up there, was probably different than what they understood, you know, an interpretation, right? And that when he saw what he saw, he told everybody to get out. And then what Christy also said, she was like, but she goes, but I was also told that Xana was partially in the hallway. And this is before, I mean, this is a long time ago. This is when we did our interview. And I went with, when I explained what it was that we were going through, when I explained that portion of the interview, I didn't want to confuse too many people. So I went with what she had said. She got firsthand information from Steve, who got it from Hunter, you know? And so I didn't want to spread too many theories, which maybe I should have just said both of those things in retrospect or thinking back. And maybe I'll play that part so that way we can, that way I can, I guess, prove to you guys that it's true. Because I have my interview with her recorded. It's been recorded this whole time. And so maybe I can play that part. I'll ask her if it's okay. And where she says what she says about Hunter and how they found Ethan, and how she was also told that she was partially in the hallway. And so it was and this was very early on, a long time ago too. So before a lot of information was put out back and forth. And so, yeah, I you know, we were even wrong in that scenario, not intentional, obviously. But even in that scenario, we weren't 100% accurate. But as soon as we try to get that information that is accurate, you know, I'll put it out there as fast as I possibly can. You guys know that. Now, what do you guys? No, I don't know. I'm not going to throw out any speculation. Never mind. Marco comes in saying DT is correct, saying that BK was just having his own American Psycho moment. I think so. I think that's exactly what he was doing. I never called parents ever, and students of mine passed. Ooh. What about this? What if you had a relationship, Dr. Vona? What if you had a relationship with a child's parents before anything happened? Like if you had a prominent student whose parents were very proud and had reached out to you and had some sort of correspondence with you and was familiar or was familiar with you. You know, he'd obviously, Bryan Kohberger in this scenario had also graduated. So they were successful in that program. So they would have been successful in your program. Would you have reached out afterwards? Would that have made a difference? Hopefully you're still here because I really want to know the answer to that question. Now, let's see. I do think she has a motive to stay close to him and his family. She definitely wants to write another book. I believe she thinks he's guilty. You know, that's the other thing too. If she wants to write a book, it's not because she thinks he's innocent. That's not her genre, right? She's not part of, writing something about the Innocence Project, or she's not talking about how DNA or any of this stuff has ever proved somebody is innocent or whatever the case may have been. Her books have been, or at least the ones in the topic, at least, have been on persons who have committed violent crimes. Let's see. Duckman says he wants Stephen King to be writing about the Idaho murders. That's crazy. It's funny. You guys, I won't be surprised if we find Kohberger hated her, but wants to use her to get an identity. He most likely wanted to show he was smarter than her, even though it wasn't true or isn't true. You're probably right. I mean, if he was trying to spark, her interest into the topic, and what he was hoping to get out of us was Dr. Ramsland saying, this was somebody that's not him, not Bryan Kohberger. Would that have gotten him off? Would that have been like, I got her. She thinks it's this person. She thinks it's that person. She thinks that the person that committed this crime is a drifter, is a trucker, is this or that. She has no idea it's me. Would that have gotten him off? Maybe. That's a good point there, Dr. Vona. I think you're actually onto something. I think you're onto something there. Fancy, it happens all the time. Sounds like he may have been so good at details that he mastered both sides: crime science investigations and crime scene creation. Yeah. Well, I don't think he mastered this crime scene creation part if he was trying to manipulate the scene so that it wouldn't come back to him. He ended up getting caught relatively quick. I mean, BTK was out there for a while. Ted Bundy was out there for a while. A lot of these other guys were out there for a while, although I do think technology probably plays a huge role in that. I think, Bryan Kohberger was around in a different era. He's probably getting away with this crime. I mean, the guy was, he thought of a lot of things when it came to doing this. And even though he made a lot of stupid mistakes, he did cover his tracks, and he almost, he got away with it for a while. If it wasn't for that knife sheath and the DNA on there, who knows where we would be today. Yes, let's hit the like button. Let's hit the like button, guys. I'd appreciate that. Is it true Dr. Ramsland is going to be at his trial? She's claiming that I don't know if she's going to be at his trial or not. She didn't say she wasn't going to be at his trial, but she said that she was not invited by the Kohbergers to Idaho. So I would assume no. I would say no, that she's probably not, unless she's going to testify. If she's going to testify, then she's definitely going to be at his trial. Music Lover says, am I the only person who's still not entirely trusting that Ramsland is being honest? I get it. There's some questionable things, but I get it. I don't think she's being dishonest. I think she's very on point with what she's saying. Called his parents, gesture of kindness, past tense. Do not advise them about the case, present tense. Those type of things. Has not been in touch with me since his arrest. No correspondence with Bryan Kohberger. Instead of saying that, he had not emailed me, I had not emailed him. No correspondence, just says that there wasn't a back and forth. What happens if an SK going to a priest for confession? Does the priest call the police? I think he can now. I think that used to be a thing where you couldn't, but I think now even doctors and psychologists, if somebody's committed a crime or is about to commit a crime that they're going to hurt somebody, and it has to be like that, like hurt somebody or kill somebody, take somebody's life, then they can and should. I think that's the way it is now. Dr. Vona, I'm not sure if I caught you. Oh man, I'm like 30 minutes behind. That's why. Live panel. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing a live panel. Any more ideas on the sealed hearing yesterday? I think it has to do with the a psychologist interviewing Bryan Kohberger for the state. I'd be very tempted to call into your show, Daniel, and say, call in. You know what? I think I might do it. Maybe a members only call in. I might see. That's what I was thinking. Maybe put in something in the Discord like, hey, this is the number to call, or put it into the members only community tab. Like, if you guys want to call, this is the number to call this week. I might do a changing number so it's not always the same, so that way the number doesn't get out there. I think that might be the thing that I'm going to do. Why do I wear sunglasses if there's no sun? I have keratoconus, and all these lights are quite sensitive to my eyesight, and it actually kind of hurts when I look into them. Daniel, yes, phone calls. I'd love to answer them. I have an idea offline, but do you think BK hated her and hoped he sure was smarter and better at her job than she is? Not for real. I mean, that's quite possible. I know you brought that up earlier, and I saw that comment. I think that you might be onto something there, to be honest with you. I think that maybe he was getting off, because remember, he asked his neighbor if, he said, so people think it's a crime of passion. I wonder if people getting it wrong, like saying, you know what, that makes sense, or people saying Brent Kopacka, or people saying drugs and all these other things that were rumors before his arrest, if that was getting him off because they weren't on the right path. You know what I'm saying? Because in a way, he was outsmarting them, and I put that in quotations. You know what I'm saying? Good point. Good question. Again, Daniel, what do you think of the odds that BK was a virgin? I don't know. Nobody's come forward, right? Nobody's come forward saying that they've dated him or been with him or anything like that. There's been no relationship statuses found on anything. He's never been Facebook official with anyone or Instagram official. I don't know if he can be Instagram official or not, but nobody's found anything like that. Pictures of him with a girlfriend or anything like that. But who's to say he didn't purchase anything either? So I don't know if he was a virgin or not. But you look at what the defense is claiming that they're worried about, right? They wanted to bring up the fact that he has autism because they were concerned about his odd behaviors and how it might come off to the jury. I mean, those aren't really, characteristics of a ladies' man. The problems that they're describing when it comes to Bryan Kohberger. So I would say if he wasn't, it was, this is my opinion, it was probably bought and paid for if he wasn't. Let's see. Hey, what's up, Marilyn? You know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna bring it back. I'm going to bring it back. You guys have talked me into it. Expect it maybe a little bit later this week. Maybe Thursday. I might do it Thursday if nothing else happens. I read between the lines in the writing. She said no book with him or others, but never said not alone. Yeah. I don't think they're. I think if he committed a crime, let me rephrase this. If he ends up getting convicted of this crime and she had some sort of prior knowledge of the guy before he committed the crime, wouldn't it be an injustice to write about it, to talk about her experience, given her experience and knowledge and expertise? I think it would be an injustice for her not to go out there and talk to people even if she was duped. I'm not saying that's the case, but she even said it herself. It's hard to see these people. These are predators. They have masks. They hide. She didn't know. I mean, even if that's the case, her going out there and saying, all right, in retrospect, I didn't pick up on this, but this is what was happening. This is what was going on. That's something I would want to read. I think that's something that most law enforcement agencies would want to read or should read. Those that are looking to capture killers and serial killers and offenders that are a similar like-minded to Bryan Kohberger. So I think in a certain sense, I think it would be an injustice for her not to write about her experiences with him. And in fact, which I have no doubt it would be, the book that she's writing, because that's the topic and the genre that she writes, is about people that commit offenses. I don't think she's going to go out there and write a true crime book or a book of how Bryan Kohberger was innocent or any of those things. That's not her field. You know what I'm saying? That's like, I think I've spoken about this before. I have another channel that I talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm a huge Steelers fan. It'd be weird if I just start all of a sudden talking about the Colts or some other random team. You know what I mean? And so, let's see. Do you think the hearing was about BK's mental illness? My opinion, it did. And so we're going many open doors for the prosecution. I do. I think I talked about this in the last one. I said, I think that the defense shot themselves in the foot. I think that they're opening the doors for the state to now be able to go in and talk to him and to get an idea of how he is mentally, see what ticks, what doesn't. And that way they can, obviously they're not going to be able to use it to a certain extent against him in trial, like what he says and stuff. But if he is a sociopath or a psychopath or those things, maybe he can be properly diagnosed. If he's not, I'm not saying he's not properly diagnosed. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But, he is not wanting the state to have a doctor speak with him. So there must be for a reason. I mean, I would want them to know. I mean, if that's what you were like standing on, right? Saying, hey, I shouldn't be, Bryan Kohberger shouldn't be put to death because he's autistic and he has these mental defects and he has dexterity issues. Why not get the state to go out there if they make the same findings? I mean, that would be powerful for his case, wouldn't it? I think it would. I just don't think they're going to find the same thing. Let's see. Put a couple stars, guys, so I can see where you guys are. I didn't even see this. Natalie James comes with a $49.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Natalie. You're amazing. Thank you. I believe BK would have become a serial killer. He was working his way into it. I do not think he was trying to impress anyone. He was simply satisfying the evil desires. Even with his sister believed he was capable of such a crime. Valid point. 100%. Cindy Hollenbeck comes in with a $2 super chat saying, I am a local. Thanks for your fair analysis. Thank you so much, Cindy. I appreciate that. And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be fair, especially in this scenario here where you have a renowned forensic psychologist and Dr. Ramsland. You have Howard Blum, who's a journalist who's worked with the New York Times and Airmail. And you have a lot of prominent figures who have been talking about this specific part. And I just want to make sure that it's that I'm being unbiased as I possibly can. I don't have any skin in the game when it comes to either one of these parties. And so I just want to make sure that the right information is out there as well. I think that's above all most important. Because there's one thing that I've said is that Bryan Kohberger doesn't need anything extra to be found guilty. What he did and committed and the evidence that they found against him is strong enough. And I think that goes for any other case. You shouldn't need any outside work or anything, twisting of facts or anything like that to prove that somebody's guilty. If they did a crime, there should be evidence for that crime to have been committed. And And if you don't have that evidence, then you need to do a better job as an investigator to find that evidence, if it exists at all. And so, in this scenario here, the evidence against Bryan Kohberger is so strong. And people say that I'm one-sided, and it's not that I'm one-sided. It's that in order to be open-minded, I use that with quotations or parentheses. I mean, quotations there is, I'd have to believe in a lot of make-believe crap, and I don't. No. But thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. Shannon comes in with a $5 super chat. It's just an idea. Only Kohberger knows the true motive. That's actually very true. This is just a theory. This is Howard Blum's theory. And only Bryan Kohberger knows his true motive if he, in fact, did commit this crime, which I'm 99.999% sure. I think it's very obvious it's him, but obviously he's not been convicted, so he's still innocent until proven guilty. But take that for what it is. Chloe comes in with a $5 gifted Drunk Turkey Show memberships. Thank you, Chloe. We appreciate you. Amazing. A mod member and a contributor to the show. Thank you so much. Frenchie84 comes in with her membership for 10 months. Thank you for your support. All right. Let's see if I can. Blum has been wrong about a lot. He should stop trying to script this case. He has done some things wrong. I'll say he has. I do think he's gotten some things right, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of this he's wrong about. It sounds like there are some things he's wrong about. I don't know if Catherine Ramsland is writing or helping anybody write a book like the sister or anything. I think she's being accurate. I think everything she said is 100% true. I don't think Dr. Ramsland lied whatsoever in anything that she said. I don't think there was any emails going back and forth between Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU. And I don't think that Bryan Kohberger has been in touch with her since his arrest. I think that leaves it open for the potential that Bryan Kohberger sent unprovoked and unresponded emails to Dr. Ramsland, and that Dr. Ramsland did not respond to them. But I do not think that there was a conversation there. I do think that Dr. Ramsland did call Bryan Kohberger's family out of kindness. And I do think that she still potentially could be in contact with him based on the fact that she says, I do not advise them about the case, instead of saying, I didn't advise them about the case. Saying I didn't advise them about the case means that the gesture of kindness is completed and over and is no longer still being a thing. But by saying I do not advise them about the case kind of leads me to believe that she still does talk to them, which, like I said, I don't think there's anything nefarious by it. I don't think she's trying to put out there that Bryan Kohberger is innocent or any of those things. It's just it may be Bryan Kohberger's family that reaches out to her, and out of respect for them, she responds. You know what I'm saying? It may not be anything that she's responding to them, but I do think that there is some sort of correspondence there, as where there was not with Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU. She says that she has never she's not talked to his sister about any book, and she's never mentioned Kierkegaard in her classes. She did not broker anything regarding any lawyers, and she's not been invited to Idaho by the Kohbergers. That doesn't mean she's not going to be there. She could be a witness. She doesn't know where they're staying, and she doesn't know who Blum's source is or why he reports information that he has no proof on. So I agree with I don't know who Blum's source is or why he reports on information he has no proof. It's her opinion too. That is her opinion. So I mean, I don't think she's lying at all. You covered the Davis Spree stabber trial. I think he was copying Kohberger. Like, actually, the first scene, all they was a knife sheath. Huh. I remember that. And I think it was weird because, like, wasn't UC Davis the team that Idaho was playing that weekend, the Vandals. I know a little bit about that case. Not a whole lot, but I know a little bit. Yes, thank you, mods. Great work tonight. I don't see many people blocked, so I see your question. Why do I allow mods to block instead of timeout? Get many subs who are blocked for sharing their opinion. It's frustrating. I trust my mods. If they're blocking somebody, it's for a reason. They usually do timeout, folks. We also do have this on a, and I want to make sure everybody understands this because I've seen this happen before as well. I believe we have it like sometimes we put it on slow mode. I don't know if it's on slow mode now. It probably is, given the amount of people in here. And sometimes it won't allow you to comment during those times. It's not that you've been timeout or blocked. It's just that it's on slow mode. But if somebody's getting timeout or blocked, it's usually for a reason. You know, the only mod that does the blocking is the wife, and I side with her all the time. So you won't get me to side with somebody over that mod or any of my mods. To be honest with you, my mods do a great job. You know, all we ask is to be respectful to myself, to our guests, to not be disrespectful to other creators, even if they're creators who I don't agree with. All right, because that's not what we're here for. You know, people don't come to watch me talk smack or talk great about anybody. They come here to watch about Bryan Kohberger, and so. But if the mods are blocking, it's for a reason. And but if you have a question of an opinion, if you can ask it in a manner that's not disrespectful, I'm sure it'll get through to me. But I have no idea. I haven't seen anybody get blocked. Palapalooza says, what do you make of Steve G mentioning things being wrapped in plastic when asked about the lack of DNA? He mentioned like Dexter his car. I think that's one of the things. He also mentioned the fact that the car was parked out in the elements in the sun, especially while I was in Pullman. It wasn't in a garage or anything like that, and that the sun has a way of degrading DNA. And I think he mentioned that he believes, and his understanding is that there was DNA found, but it was contaminated or corrupted or not corrupted. It was messed up because of the degradation of the sun and etc. Maybe even cleaning supplies. Let's see. Well, what's your question, Ariane? Definitely Troll's been blocked purely for asking legitimate questions about Bryan potentially being not guilty. Ask away. What are your questions? What are your questions? If the state had something up their sleeve, the defense would know and try to keep it out like everything else. Yeah. That was funny, Truth. I was like, they're serious and they're dying to know what Jeff was thinking. I still want to know what you think, Dr. Vona. I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting on you, Dr. Vona. If you had spoken with a student's family member prior to any such crime, like for instance, I know you mentioned that you'd never reached out and some of them had passed, but if you had had a relationship with the student and the student had already graduated, let's just say they were very successful in your class, and that's one of the reasons why you may have known who their parents were, would you have reached out at that point? Let's see. Get him serious. I'm just kidding. Oh, this was funny. Proberer think Daniel is an award-winning author. I could be an award-winning author, but under the pseudonym I don't even know. I'm gonna come up with one. And an AI interview generating genius. That one was funny. I told Chloe and everybody in the Discord, I was like, I wonder what people are gonna say. As far as I wonder what the Proberbers are gonna say about my interview with Steve. They're probably gonna say it was AI generated. And then like an hour or two later, I get in the Discord messages like, hey, look, they're claiming it's AI. And my comment or my response is that it's not that I was psychic about it. It's that the Proberbers, certain ones are so predictable. It's just predictable. Let's see. I'll be calling this one a show here pretty soon. Let's hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you again, Chloe, for gifting another 5 Drunk Turkey Show memberships. Oh, wait, no, that's the same ones. Chloe's probably like, wait, what did I do? Thank you, guys. You guys are amazing. I just want to say thank you to everybody. I can hear my wife laughing. I wonder what part she's at. Oh, man, let me go down to the very bottom. Add it under psychic. You already answered my questions. No need to express. Okay. Oh, you did answer no. Thank you. I didn't see it. Well, guys, that's all I'm going to do today. I've been at it for an hour and 41. I didn't expect to be out here this long. I'll be back on Thursday night, unless something else happens tomorrow, referencing in the case, as far as like in the any documents or anything that those things drop. I think this is going to be the end for the saga between Dr. Ramsland and Blum until probably trial, when we find out if Ramsland's going to testify or not. I strongly suspect we're not going to hear anything else about this until then. I think what needed to be said has been said on all sides, and I think that the next thing we hear will be if Dr. Ramsland if Dr. Ramsland testifies, and or if Mr. Howard Blum recants or says something different or double downs. And so hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. Remember, guys, I am not Howard Blum and I am not Dr. Ramsland. So I did not make the theory up and I did not have the responses back. I was just covering them. You guys have a great night. We'll see y'all next time. Peace out.